Welcome back for part 3 of the Training Tracker tutorial videos. If you haven't seen parts 1 or 2, I would recommend you go back and watch those videos first, as they explain what information you need to this point to get started. Hi, I'm Jennifer from Jester Safety Resources. If you're struggling to keep track of all of your employee training and don't have a software program to do it for you, I hear you. In this video, I'll show you how to put in the customizations that make your tracker really work for you. This 4-part series walks you through a proven and effective way to track your workplace trainings so that when asked to provide this information by your employer or an auditor on the spot, you always have everything that you need right there at your fingertips. In part 1, you compiled and documented your employee identifiers. In part 2, you entered all of the trainings that you offer to your employees. Now, in part 3, you'll learn how to distinguish the trainings required by each specific employee and how to utilize color coding within the body of your spreadsheet. And finally, when we reach part 4, which is a bonus video, I'll show you how to lay out a roadmap to break down department-specific training using job safety analysis or company policies, and the best way to track what's been reviewed by each employee. Let's take another detailed look at our growing training trackers and customize them with some finishing touches. This week, we'll start by focusing on some color coding that I've personally found to be invaluable when it comes to being able to quickly identify what it is that I'm looking at. So let's start by taking a look at the employee information. You'll notice that my first employee, John Blutarski, physically works at the ABC company. His information has been color-coded purple, as have all ABC company employees. Of course, you can choose any color that you want, just make sure it isn't too dark, and then start coloring. Next is our favorite employee, Ricky Bobby, who works at the EFG company. We've chosen a different color, pink this time, to designate all EFG employees. If you oversee employees who physically work at various facilities, this will really help you to visually organize and quickly identify who works there. Another important designation is to assign a specific color for any employee who has voluntarily quit, been laid off, terminated, or had their temporary assignment end. You'll notice that the next employee, Ron Burgundy, has been assigned a bright neon blue, which flags him as no longer being an active employee within the company. For your training tracker, it won't matter which company or facility they were originally assigned to. This shade of blue is always assigned to non-active employees. And last but not least, when it comes to assigning employee colors, I always use green for any worker employed through a temporary agency, regardless of the facility they've been assigned to. Remember, their physical location assignment is still noted under the location column. Now that you've decided on the color scheme you want to use to help identify different aspects of your employee list, it's important to stick with those colors. Before long, you won't even have to think about it. Your brain will just automatically register what each color assignment is, and that's when it really starts to get easy. I've gotten so used to this layout, I would be lost without my color coding, and I hope you find it equally as helpful. The next part is pretty important, crucial to the setup of your tracker actually. Notice that I've added narrow columns in front of each main training category. Each of these narrow columns have either an R or an N designation. The R represents the word required. N represents the words not required. You will use these designations to indicate whether the training is required or not by each employee. Let's look at the template for an example. John Blutarski is a maintenance supervisor. Because he works in the maintenance department, his job duties sometimes require him to perform tasks at elevation, therefore, aerial lift training is required. The letter R is entered into the narrow column indicating that the training is required. A second example would be Ricky Bobby, who works in the office. He is not required to complete ammonia systems operator training because he's a part of the administration and wouldn't be performing work at the ammonia system at his routine job. For this reason, the letter N is entered into the narrow column in front of the ammonia training to indicate that the company doesn't require him to complete that specific training. You'll need to sit down and identify, normally by department and job title, what training will be required for each individual employee and enter the R or N designations. You guys are rock stars. I know this is a lot of work, but trust me when I say it's completely worth it and you'll be glad you made the effort, I promise. The next thing we need to do is to learn how to use our tried and true color coding again, but this time we're going to use it to be able to quickly identify whether or not a required training has been completed by an employee or if it still needs to be completed. Looking at the template again, I'm going to draw your attention to the Ammonia Systems Operator training. For this example, you can see that I've entered the training was completed on January 6th, 23, and they passed the exam with 76%, and they won't need to be trained again until January 6th of 2026. But I took it a step further by color coding the cell green. This is easily done by being on the Home tab and selecting the Good button. Looking at the Ammonia Systems Operator training column again, you'll notice that this time the circled cell is not a required training for the next employee on the spreadsheet. So in this case, an N was entered and the cell is colored yellow by using the same technique we just learned, only we select the neutral button. I also type NA in the cell to indicate that additional information isn't applicable. The third and only other color you should use here is red. Looking at the template, you can see how the Bad button is used to create a red cell to show that a training is overdue and needs to be scheduled. Now that we've got the color coding down, let's take a quick look at the kind of information that I'll include when documenting a training. If you really want to be the safety VIP, you're going to need to enter more than just an X and a color. For example, look at the circled cell and aerial lift training. I've included the date the classroom training was completed, expiration date, date of the completed drive test, and also that the driving certification expires in 3 years. Because this particular training is still valid for this employee, it is green. Now might also be a good time to mention that in addition to filing the completed hard copy training paperwork, I also scan absolutely everything. This might be a little more work on the front end, but it's made my job exponentially less difficult when I'm asked to pull the last 3 years of safety training for an employee who has been injured and is litigating, or if we need to add it to a disciplinary action. In this example, the ethyl alcohol training details include the date of the classroom training and expiration date, as well as any hands-on training. Because the classroom training must be completed annually and has expired, for this employee, the cell is red. Now for myself, I haven't tried to set any kind of automatic parameters that change the colors on its own, but what I do is this. Because I would normally start to schedule employee trainings in the beginning of January each year, I begin with a complete review of the entire spreadsheet at the beginning of the year and basically reset everything back to red. The only times this wouldn't apply is if the training did not expire on an annual basis. It's important to remember that your training tracker will be considered a living document, which means it's constantly being updated as training occurs or you're adding or removing employees. A specific training that I want to touch on before we wrap up is the respirator training. As a safety manager, you'll not only need to track the classroom training, but also the medical approvals and fit testing. I want to show the types of information I would normally include when it comes to respirators, especially the tight fitting. So for the classroom training, I'll add the date completed and the annual expiration date. The next step in authorizing respirator use is the medical approval from a physician. What you don't see here is that I'll also normally enter the date that the employee medical questionnaire packet was dropped off at the medical clinic for review. That way, if they aren't returned back to me within a few days, I can refer back to my spreadsheet to remind me of the exact date the clinic received them. Once medical approval is received, I'll note that on the spreadsheet. Approval is usually only valid for 1 year, and I'll document that as well. And then finally, for each employee, depending on their job duties, I'll document their specific potential exposures along with the required permissible exposure limits or PEL. This type of information can prove to be a huge time saver because it's required when you're preparing the medical questionnaires prior to distributing them to your employees each year. And then finally, document the date fit testing occurred, when it expires, and the size of the mask. Other information options could include the brand and model number of the respirator, and also if you performed quantitative or qualitative testing. Congratulations on completing part 3 of your training tracker. Your task this week is to determine the specific training requirements for each employee and designate it as such on your spreadsheet. Heck, go ahead and start your color coding as well. Go through your training paperwork and see what's already been completed and when it's due again, and then get busy entering it all into your spreadsheet. You're going to feel amazing when you're finished and step back and look at what you've created, and I couldn't be more honored to help you do it. Next week will be our final bonus tutorial where I'm going to show you how to tab out extra spreadsheets to not only determine what JSAs you could supplement into your training based on department, but also how to track each of them. I've added a link in the description below that will take you directly to Paper Jester safety resources at www.paperjester.com, where I'm confident you'll find everything that you need to cover all of those important safety training topics. As always, it's my hope that you find value in these tips and tutorials. If so, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching, and take care, my friends.